Today I want to tie some things together today. I want to tie some biblical things with some practical, things that we can take away and apply. So, I've been doing some work with my therapist, and one of the things that we often talk about is something called the default mode network. The default mode network is basically all our programming, all our conditioning that we've accumulated or have has been downloaded into our identity that we operate from. So things that make you happy, things that make you sad, your reactions, things that you dislike, all these things just naturally operate. Things that keep you comfortable, that make you feel safe. These are all the default mode network, and oftentimes it's the default mode network. Those things that we've taken on as our own, starting in childhood, that when we grow up causes us suffering because what we needed as a child we no longer need as an adult. In order for a child to maintain relationship with their guardian or parent, whenever they are faced with a situation of having a traumatic experience, the child always makes themselves out to be the bad person. What that does, and they do that to maintain contact with their guardian or parent. So in order to maintain contact, I can't say it's you, or I don't understand that it could be you because I'm a child. So it must be me. There must be something wrong with me. And from that space, we start to develop a persona. We start to develop an image in order to maintain connection. So if I was a child and I cried and maybe my parent had, had a bad day or something and they weren't able to be there in that moment and they said, stop that crying, I could take that traumatic experience and internalize that and say, maybe I'm too much. So that's a dysfunctional belief that becomes a part of the default mode network. And from that dysfunctional belief, we develop a compensatory identity to mask or hide that dysfunctional belief. So if I believe that I'm too much just from one traumatic experience, but oftentimes it's more than that. But if I believe that I'm too much just from that experience, then my compensatory identity is going to be I don't need anything. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm cool. I'm nonchalant. I have no needs. And that's how the child maintains relationship with the guardian or parent. They make themselves out to be wrong, develop a dysfunctional belief about themselves, and then from there stems a compensatory identity from which they live, and everything else flows out of that. So if I go through life, let's say I'm that child, let's say I go through life thinking I'm cool, I don't need nothing. I really do need love. I really do need something. I have needs. And a lot of men struggle with this, because as men we're told, don't show emotion, man up. And it can be toxic because we all have emotions, and if they're not expressed, they're going to come out one way or another. So it's best that we learn how to express our emotions in a healthy way so they don't just come out all at once or in unhealthy ways. So back to the default mode network. So having all these dysfunctional beliefs, we come into adulthood and we're living adults with all these dysfunctional beliefs and all these compensatory identities, and we forget who we are. We don't know who we are. Not even forget, we don't know who we are. So the work of the default mode network is to let it go. Now, I said at the beginning I wanted to tie biblical principles into this conversation. In the Bible, Jesus says that he's come to save us from sin. And he uses it in a singular manner, not sins. In some passages, he says, from your sins. But I remember him reading where he talked to someone, and before he healed them, he said, your sin is forgiven, or go and sin no more. So to me, I've come to the understanding that sin is the default mode network. Yes, there are sins that we commit, lying, doing things that we shouldn't when we know we shouldn't. Those are sins. But sin, something that this is something that we're born into. We're born with this human nature, this conditioning, these constructs. So for me, sin is the human construct, the default mode network that we all have. He said, I've come to save you first from that. You don't have to live as a slave to your default mode network anymore. Baptism. You're baptized clean from old programming. Hello. This is practical. So that you can walk into a new, renewed mind. A renewed mind. So I now see the need for the forgiveness of my sin. First, my sin, my human nature, my default mode network, how I deal with fear, and you gotta understand your default mode network. You don't have a choice in that. What makes you mad makes you mad. What triggers you triggers you. What brings you fear brings you fear. What gives you anxiety brings you anxiety from something in the past, of course. But we don't have any choice in that. We're just a slave to it. And a lot of people walk around unconscious, slaves to sin, slaves to the default mode network, thinking this is just the way that I am. And it don't have to be like that, is what I'm saying. So what's the work? The work is letting go. First is acknowledging that Paul talks about it. He says, the things that I want to do, I don't do. And the things I don't want to do, I keep doing. That's the default mode network. That's it right there. I can't explain it any better than that. The things I don't want to do, I keep doing. And the things that I don't want to do, the things I want to do, I can't do. Then he says, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Because a lot of us think that we're living in the default mode network. It's like we try to have here's the thing, it's like we try to have a relationship with God through the default mode network, through sin. So a lot of us have probably never even heard God, have never followed your conscience, have never followed your heart. Because if you followed your heart, it's following your heart from what we've been programmed, conditioned to believe, to behave, which is not the real you, which is not the authentic you. It's some image that we've designed full of compensatory identities to be safe and to have a sense of belonging in the world, even though we already belong. We were taught we had to do something in order to be. And I'm coming to tell you that all you have to do is be. So that means you have to let go of doing, which is hard. Because if you have a really deep belief that you have to fit this mold in order to be loved, when that comes up in some aspect in your life where that's pushed against, that dysfunctional belief is pressed, the default mode network is going to react. So what do we do? First thing, like I said, is that we acknowledge that we do have a default mode network. And with that comes compassion, patience, love, grace for oneself first. Stopping the projection of, you made me feel this way. This situation caused me to do this. No. That's giving away your power, which we did as children, because we really had no choice. So once we come to terms with our default mode network, we stop projecting and we sit we start to sit with those dysfunctional beliefs that make us uncomfortable. Growth happens when we're uncomfortable. But here's the beauty in that. This unfamiliar journey that we're taking is here. It's here to show you who you are. This unfamiliar journey is here to reveal to you who you are in your entirety, in your essence, in your being. Isn't that so much more beautiful than having to hold up some image you created that isn't even authentic? That's going to keep you from a relationship with God. Oh, I have so many avenues I want to take. I'm going to take this one really quick. Oftentimes, this is deep. Oftentimes, I'm speaking for a man, for men, as a man. Oftentimes, what we put up isn't even what people desire from us. Oftentimes, what we build up isn't even what attracts people. Some of the most attractive people have been those who have been vulnerable, those who have been open, those who have been. Because what makes one attractive, this is a nugget, what makes one attractive is your relatableness. If you're perfect, you're unattractive. It may be good to look at, but it's not attractive. I'm thinking of nature. Nature that hasn't been touched by humans is beautiful. It's more beautiful than well-kept gardens and well-kept. It just has an aura to it, a God aura. It's just beautiful. You can't explain it with words. You can explain a well-kept garden with words, but you can't explain a forest and the layout and the backdrop of the trees and the animals. And you can't explain it. But so yeah, the first step is to acknowledge that we all have this default mode network, that we all have sin, that we all have been programmed, that we all have conditioning that we suffer from, that once was used to protect us. So we give ourselves grace, compassion, patience, love. When we get triggered, we no longer project, saying, you caused this to happen to me, or you made me feel this way. No, the only reason you felt that way is because there's something in your default mode network from your subconscious, from some traumatic experience that you had that made you react. Because what makes one person react to something, the other person isn't fazed by. What causes you to get angry will not cause me to get angry. So we're all unique in this. And when we stop projecting, we take back our power to say, what is it within me? What is it within me that is causing me to react? Boom, now you start shining a light inwardly on this default mode network. And then you start to work with those aspects of your life. You start to accept yourself instead of running to an image that we've built up to protect ourselves. So all in all, instead of living in our become what we became, we learn to be in the present moment, situation by situation. So I hope this sheds some light on why we need to be saved from sin in the life, the free, abundant life that God offers us through salvation from sin, so that we can be our free, authentic being